So I think the congregate facility becomes much more difficult due to those problems.
Well, and maybe again, the housing first model, using a transition in place, maybe that helps. Because you're not in a facility, you're putting people in a home that's zoned for them to live in, for them to be housed in. And so maybe that, and do you have to get the city's permission to rent a house? I don't think so, so that may be a good option to use. I think we would be very creative in your situation, and if I had to move just outside the county or outside the city lines, but I would do something, because I know you guys have a significant problem in this area that you're passionate about addressing.
Yeah.
And as you know, in rural areas, transportation is a huge issue. Getting anywhere, for us, we have to go about 20 miles north to get a better job, a better paying job. And that's Olathe. I was in a meeting that our city was having with our mayor, who owns the only taxi in town, which is our only transportation. And I just wasn't thinking. It was a large group, and we were talking about barriers to employment. And I said, transportation is just a nightmare. And she went ballistic on me, but the truth is she's wrong. There's a bus that comes down from Olathe once a day and back once a day. It doesn't connect and go very many places. In order to get a job that they're going to tell you the hours you're going to work, you're not going to tell them, and try to make those connections, make that work, it was just almost impossible. It was just not even an option for us. Now, if you needed to go up there for a medical appointment, maybe. But people need really a car. We're in a nation where if you're going to go 20 miles to work, you need a car. If you're in the country, you need vehicles. So we've taken donated vehicles, got them fixed, given them away. We have in our as part of our grant, we have transportation in that. Initially, we wanted money to rehab cars to give to our clients, but since not every client would need that, HUD said no, that you can't do that. So we converted it into a kind of a motor pool. So if they're able to drive and if we can insure them, then they can sign up. Here's when I need the car. We hand them the keys. They go to whatever they need to do, appointments, whatever, and then come back, turn the keys back in. We have a driver who works very part-time, so if they need to be driven, we can handle that too. I want to someday have a conversation with the Department of Transportation about, you know where I'm going with it. We have 3 general transportation organizations in our city that, because they can make some of their own rules, make it really difficult for anyone else to use the service. I'll just be blunt about that. And so general transportation, public transportation, I would love to see us do something that's more really like public transportation and include some of the 3 small towns in our county and have it go up to Olathe on a regular basis and just circulate and call if you need it, or also have some stops. But we've got to do something, because as long as we can't, this is another great example. We had people who were getting DUIs and were required to do classes, had to go to Olathe. So they were quartered to do classes. They were in Paola, 23 miles away from the center they had to go to, the closest one. Do you think some of them drove without their license to get the stuff so they could get their license again and then get caught and yeah. So transportation is just huge for us. And I know you probably have some of those issues too.
Your Department of Aging doesn't have some kind of a transportation system?
Our Department of Aging, we don't have much of a Department of Aging. I don't think we have a senior center that does, but again, they have such restricted hours, and you have to know a day in advance, and you have to call.
And a recommended donation.
Yeah, and there's a donation for the ride, which if you don't donate, you don't ride, so it's not really like a donation. But yeah, so we've just not found any of the public transportation, and we have searched it out. We also had kind of a friend on the inside of an organization where they talked about their policies were made to keep basically their clients and their vehicles, even though the general transport.
So that everyone knows what's available and who's there. We do a lot of outreach with our community partners, with our landlords. Oftentimes when folks end up in a shelter, they've got past rent that they owe or past utilities. And so one of the things that we always try to do is to work with them where they are. And if I need to contact a landlord and set up arrangements with him so that you can get into housing, and if I have to be the one that says, okay, I'm going to be there and we'll go in and we'll do case management, then that's what we do. Whatever it takes to try to get you where you need to go. Being part of the Community Action Agency, I've got lots of help, which, we have a Family and Community Services Department that will come in and do case management with families after they leave shelter, if we're overtaxed. We have a transportation department that has quite a bit of transportation in our local city that we live in. But it is very difficult when you get out into the community. And it's also difficult because of the fact that in Southeast Kansas there are 3 shelters. And there's one in Pittsburgh, there's one in Parsons, and there's one in Chanute. Well, if you were in another county, such as Cherokee County, you know, or somewhere else, you don't have any support system in Pittsburgh. And so coming to Pittsburgh is a difficult thing to do, or going to Parsons. There are more job opportunities. We kind of try to sell it that we'll be here for you, we'll support you, we'll help you get the things that you need, and then we'll help you find a job in Cherokee County so that you can go back there. We'll help you find a house, because we just don't have any other services in our smaller communities that are able to do these things. Transitional housing, and we worked with HPRP when it was open through Kim Wilson Housing, and that was a wonderful program. And it was absolutely phenomenal, the help that it could provide to the families that we worked with. We did some homeless prevention. We did a lot of rapid rehousing through this program, and we had great success with it. And the people that we've talked to, the case management, landlords are more willing to work with families that don't have stellar reputations when you can assure them that there'll be people in here, there'll be people coming to see them, there'll be people talking to them, making sure that they're doing the things that they need to do. We're going to work with them on budgeting, and we're going to help to show them how they can accomplish the things that they need to do. And we let our families set their goals so that, you know, we know what, we think we know what you need to do, but we don't.
Yeah.
You know, we need you to set your goals and tell us what you want to do. And so we work really, really one-on-one with each individual family that comes into the shelter. We are, like I said, we're 12 units. We're staffed with part-time staff. There are 2 full-time people that work at the shelter, myself and my administrative support. And all of our attendants are part-time, but we are staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if there's any type of an emergency or situation, there's always someone there that can help you and support you. I think we have pretty good success. I know our rate of recidivism, since we've started doing more case management and working more closely with the families, has dropped. We serve probably around 100 families a year average, about 300 people. So, but it's nice to see, and I like Jay said, we're in a small community. So we get to see the people that we've worked with year after year. And, you know, many years ago when we first started in the shelter, I worked with a young family that had been homeless their entire adult life, had traveled from place to place, you know, state to state, had lots and lots of barriers, lots of things that were kind of against them, and they came to our shelter and they made a connection through the support that we serve, and they are now business owners in our community. So, you know, we've had some pretty good success. We kind of like that, and we want you to not be homeless because you don't want to be homeless, because you've got skills that you've learned, that you can feel like you're a part of your community. And so it's very, very important to us that our community support us and support the people that we serve. Like I said, I talk to landlords, I talk to business owners. I will call and say, hey, you got any jobs? You know, the local landscaping companies, when the weather started getting nice, I was on the phone going, hey, you got any jobs? I got guys who need work. And so working from that approach and including your community, I think is part of what has helped to make us successful. We are very interested in doing some more rehousing type programs. I'm really excited about the new things with ESG and hoping that we can build on that, because people need, not only do they need emergency shelter when they're homeless, they also need a direction to move forward. They want to go, they just don't know where to go. And if we can show them paths to get to where they need to be, then they can make that choice to take that path and move, and we can support them in that process. And so that's kind of what we want to do. We want to show you, here's some options for you. Where do you want to go, and how can I support you in that process? Yes?
I just wanted to make sure I understood you. You said you're under CCAP and you have a shelter in Pittsburgh now. In Chanute and Parsons, there's shelters?
There are shelters in Chanute and Parsons. They are not operated by our agency.
Oh, they're not.
But there's, Safe Haven and Faith House are the two other shelters that are in our corner.
But they're not under CCAP?
They're not under CCAP,
Okay.
no.
I'm kind of coming from the opposite perspective. I work in Kansas City, Kansas, and I live in Westport in Kansas City, Missouri. So, you know, I moved down where all the dangerous folks are supposed to. And I raised my children there, you know. And I'm wondering, coming from, like you said, the young woman who didn't want to go to Kansas City, Missouri, do you think a lot of that is racism based, kind of because of?
No, I really don't. They watch the news, and of course, what's the news? What does the news put on? It's everything that's bad.
Mm-hmm.
And so these folks have lived in a small community their entire life, and it's just foreign to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's perception, it's not reality.
Right.
We know that it's okay to go to the City Union Mission and you're not gonna die.
Well, I was in Harrisonville one time, and there was a traffic jam on 71 highway, and I got off and I said, where's like the local county road that goes down to like Holmes Street? And they said, you need to get back on the highway because down there they shoot first and ask questions later.
Mhm.
You know, which I know better because I live in Westport, and I work in Kansas City, Kansas, and I mean, I've been working there for years and nothing, I go to the homeless camps and nothing bad ever happened to me. So.
What I read about domestic violence is, it's really more dangerous in rural areas because there's more guns.
Mhm.
You know, and people are out in the boondocks a lot. So, yeah, her view of it was totally perception.
Mhm.
And see, the news just doesn't cover as much in rural areas. It still happens down there. And you may get a little local coverage, but when you turn on Channel 9 News in Kansas City, what you see is what happens in town.
Mhm.
And so that's where I think people develop their, and I think the same is true of folks who are in urban areas who don't want to come our direction. Our HUD funding doesn't allow us to serve them anyway. We've defined counties, Miami and Lynn County as our service area, but we don't get lots of requests for that. Because I think there's a similar opposite perception. You know, what's down there for me, you know, it's just a whole different life, I think is what's perceived.
I'm coming, you know, just being an urban guy and working in an urban setting, I'm kind of trying to absorb your perspective, because it's interesting to me, so.
See, even we have a cultural difference. I mean, it's true, it really is true. And I don't think I realized that when we began our programming, that was gonna be so important to consider. But there are some key differences. What I would love to see KU do someday in their social department is to study rural culture compared to urban culture and define those for us, because there are distinct differences. And I know just kind of a hands-on level, I don't have data, but at a hands-on level, I know what some of those differences are. But I would love to see a study done to talk about the cultural differences, because it's important if you're going to serve in a rural area that you serve them in the way they'll be served, same as it is in urban areas. And part of our problem is that urban areas, work have been done for, you know, a couple centuries even, with people who are homeless or poor. But in rural areas, it's always been kind of the local community took care of themselves, and somewhere in the 70s, 80s, I think, all the problems that were typically considered urban, drugs and violence and all that, became level playing ground in rural areas too. And so churches or whatever community organizations used to handle all that stuff, suddenly are throwing their hands up saying, how do we deal with meth addiction? You know, we can't do anything about that. And so all of a sudden it appears there's this giant problem, but it's been growing for years. Only it doesn't get news coverage. You know, it took us getting the largest grant this last year, I think, in the state of Kansas to finally get a TV station to come down from Kansas City and do a very short story on it. It's just hard to get the word out constantly about rural homelessness. So
I think it has to do with the size of shelters too. The shelters in some of those larger communities are huge and serve hundreds of people, and that's just a scary thing for people, especially with mental health issues. And some of the shelters they need to for safety, but there are some shelters that I wouldn't feel comfortable working in. When you walk into a shelter and there's metal detectors, and all of the businesses around have bars in the winter.